I've been on and off there for 25 years. So I've known Bill that long. Yeah, I know, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, and I've done some of his readings, you know, because he writes and then
playwriting. I've done some of those too.
Yeah. So it's always fun to learn who's in his friend circle because some great people.
He's been there a long time. I think he's really the only one of us who's had such incredibly steady work. I mean, I guess, I mean, I don't have anything like steady. I've been a part-time worker for 50 years.
Right.
But, I mean, if you, Family Ties, yes, that was 7 years. And of course, Tremors is 30 years off and on.
Right.
But nothing like Bill. I've always said if I'd wanted steady work, I would have done something else for a living.
Yeah, that's true. That's right. I know we do get spoiled on a soap opera because to be able to.
I don't know how. I'll tell you. Are we in the middle of the interview now? Have you started?
Well, we're recording, so yeah,
recording. I mean, we're happy to do we're happy to give you the.
That's fine.
Full throat. We were planning on giving you a full-throated intro.
No, that's fine. We don't need a full-throated intro. I guess we're recording, and that's good. You know, I did The Young and the Restless for about 4 or 5 months.
Yes, I saw that.
And it was the most bizarre experience. I was not suited for it. Let's just put it that way, because I was accustomed to. I learned some valuable things from it. But I was accustomed to more rehearsal
time.
Time.
Yes.
And I was and it was a totally new character who was being introduced. So of course I'm trying to establish this character and find out, okay, what is he about and what drives him? And speaking of driving things, I think I ultimately drove the producers crazy. They were like, can we move him off the show as quickly as possible because he really doesn't get it. You know, I would have an episode and I'd walk in and say, you know, this guy was not suicidal yesterday. Why is he suicidal today? You know, things like that. It was like,
actually ask questions.
That question is totally inappropriate, Mr. Gross. Just be suicidal. You know, I mean, I ultimately drove them. I think they're still taking Prozac as a result of my appearance on The Young and the Restless, because I would say, but this doesn't make sense. And they went, that's not important. And I'll tell you what I did learn, which was commitment. That is to say, it is a little like I discovered, it's a little like working in improv. Somebody hands you an imaginary baseball. You can't say, oh, thanks for handing me the watermelon. No, it's a baseball. You have to accept it as a baseball. And so I ultimately felt that doing that work for me was a study in, it's like improvisation.
Absolutely.
You have to accept the givens, however crazy they may seem to you or have no bearing on what you were the day before. You just, oh, that's what I am today. It's a baseball, not a watermelon.
Yeah.
And so that was useful, I think, learning that. And rather late in my career, it was like improvisation.
Yeah, it is a lesson in presence in a way. Right. Because it's where you are, who you're with.
Acceptance. Yes, total acceptance in the circumstances without question.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be very helpful if I'm ever in a hostage situation sometime. No, I mean, I had a nice time, and I've still been, you know some of the people there and keep in touch loosely with some of them, but I think I was unsuited for that. I was a theater person who was used to
rehearsal,
for
the little things.
And then while I was there, they started giving out I was going to say condoms, but that's not it. No, they
they should have done that earlier for sure.
Right, they started giving out these memos, which same number of syllables as condoms.
Yep, I can see where you went.
Memos, condoms. Yeah, I could make the mistake. They started giving out memos saying, "Oh, we can only do one take. We don't have time for more than one take." And I'm going, well, what if my arm ab gets caught? I'm sorry, there's a phone.
Oh, that's Young and the Restless calling right now.
They want me back. Obviously.
You're not suicidal anymore.
So, right. So, the message may come through any second. I'm sorry. I'm not accustomed to this. I forgot to turn off the phone. So they started handing out memos saying, "Oh, we can only have one take. We really don't have time for any more than one take." It's like, well, I can be prepared, but what if like my arm gets caught in a massive machine and gets cut off? We can use it. We can adapt it. That's just the way this character is today. Okay.
So was the memo addressed to the entire company, but probably just for you?
Not just for me. Well, the memo I got was don't ask questions.
Yeah. So Michael, what year was that around?
That had to be 8 or 10 years ago, something like that.
Oh, okay.
And was that an opportunity that just kind of landed in your lap? I mean, it wasn't something that you were seeking out, I can't imagine.
No, they actually said we're interested in you for this new character. And I thought they obviously thought they had the wrong address. And as it turns out, they did. And they're wonderful people on the show.
Oh, no, it's great. Yeah.
Judith Chapman, I don't know if you know her.
Yes.
She and I were sort of old lovers in this thing. And she's a wonderful lady, and I just admire so many what these people are doing and how long they've been doing it. It just it was a terrible match. I'll drink to that.
Yeah, right.
Well, what's funny, Michael, and I don't know if Bill tells you this, but 10 years ago, we were doing 30 scenes a day, 30 or 40. Now we're doing 70.
I can't imagine it.
I know it's mind-boggling. It really is. Like, there's not even time for rehearsal now. It's like, just shoot it. Right.
Whoa.
Let's hope it's good.
Well,
moving on.
I admire that commitment, as you say, because ultimately it's what all of us have to do. I'm just accustomed to doing it after a little more rehearsal.
Yeah, no kidding. So I actually had a question for you that was going to be down the line, but now that we're talking about it, because you've done theater, your background's theater, right? You've done obviously sitcoms, you've done Lifetime movies, which shoot faster than normal, right? And you've done primetime shows. You've done it all. Out of everything that you've done, what is the medium that gives you the most rush or passion that you couldn't live without?
Oh boy. That being said, it may surprise you to hear that I probably could live without all of it if I had to. I mean, I have a full life. I enjoy my life. I have a great family. I have hobbies. So I'm not quite as desperate as I used to be. Now, there was a time when I just boom, full speed ahead. My only lover was my work. Everything else was set aside. I remember I was for a couple of years at a theater company very early in my career, and I was 3 years at a theater company. And I said to an old girlfriend, years later, I talked to an old girlfriend. I said, "I'm sorry, I kind of ran out on you after 3 years. I was moving." She said, I knew that was your lover. I knew that was the first, your career was, I knew all of us were second bananas to what you were. That's changed. That's changed,
sure.
And I think it comes with time and life and, all that life expectancy, all those sorts of things. But while theater really is a wonderful actor's medium, I've begun to enjoy all the mediums. That is for different reasons, but I think it all boils down to the material. The material,
right?
The writer. That to me, I so admire writers, and to me, it's the material that makes that's what gets me off right there. It's how good is that stuff, and I don't care what the medium is.
Sure,
it's the words on the page, and I suppose that's why, in general, I was a little less excited about the medium of the daytime drama, because it's written so quickly, and I sometimes I need times to settle. I need different drafts. Even in we're ostensibly here in some ways to talk about Tremors.
Absolutely.
7.
Of course.
So I'll tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for 30 years. This is the 7th film we've done.
Right.
And I revisit it every couple of years. And I'm also a part now of the creative team in a way.
Oh, wow.
That is to say, we do our work and the story. I'm a part of how that story is developed, and particularly a part of the arc of this character, where he goes from scene to scene, his dialogue, things like that. And I need several drafts to get it right. For 30 years, I've known this guy, and yet there's a part of me that will write a line of dialogue and say, I just let that rest there for a minute. That's not quite right. There was a novelist whose name I forget right now, who said, time is the greatest editor. And I think in some ways, particularly in a novel, in long form writing of any sort, to let it sit and come back and look at it with fresh eyes is important. That's what I missed in the daytime drama.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Letting it settle and saying, is there a better way to do this? Is there a better way to we're shooting, let's try a couple takes, and can we try this? Can we finesse this? It's in that search that I've always, even in theater, I've always enjoyed the active rehearsal more than I did the active performance. Rehearsal is creation, and in some ways, performance is recreation night after night. But within bounds, you can't keep changing things and creating constantly. It's at some point you've got to fix the show and yet make it fresh every night. But that's what I always loved rehearsal more than I did performance. Even in long performances, I've done Broadway shows and performances for months and months. And while I enjoy it and can keep it fresh, I love rehearsals. I love the act of discovery as opposed to the act of creation, as opposed to the act of recreation. If I had been a stonemason building a great cathedral, let's say gargoyles in Notre Dame, I would have, as the stonemason, said, okay, let me create this gargoyle. Would you apprentices mind doing the other 49 for me, please? I've proved I can make a gargoyle, and a damn good one. I don't want to do 49 more of them.
Right.
What's interesting about that is, in daytime, when you get that one take, you get to make a bold choice, and then you got to live with it. You got to live and die with it. But what's interesting, and as actors, we've all played in different mediums, right? There is something really freeing about not having to be like, ooh, I like that one. Now I got to do it 8 different ways from different angles.
Right.
So it's interesting that what you say about, like, sometimes I find single camera feel like, yes, you want to be, sometimes feeling like that pressure to recreate, which is interesting.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, that just from what you said, that just made me think of that. Yeah.
I think that's, it's not what, I'm not one of these people who wants to do it 20 times, but I want to have several shots at it because I think I have commitment issues.
That's funny.
Maybe that's it. That's why it took so long to get married finally.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. We've started this off in the wackiest possible way.
No, I know, which is wonderful.
It's great.
But we are like 30 years of Tremors, which 30 years of anything in the entertainment industry is pretty amazing. 30 years of Burt. And so now you're in the 7th installment of it. Playing a character over 30 years, the joys of figuring out how he develops and how he ages, how he, you know, comes to his decisions, and the fact that now you're more integral in the creation of it, that must feel right. Like, you know this character maybe better than anybody at this point.
In some ways, yes. There's still the original writers of Tremors probably even know him better than I do, because one of them has based his Burt Gummer, I think, on his life.
Oh.
And I mean, not to that extreme, but comedy.
I was gonna say,
Right.
Comedy is, you know, something, you know, an exaggerated form of life in some ways. And but I have a bead on him. And somebody was asking me the other day about, would I do an interview improvising as Burt? And I said, no, I don't trust myself to get it right the first time. Mm-hmm. He requires some thought. He's so wacky that I need the time to work on him. And I said, no, I wouldn't do an improvised interview speaking as Burt. In many cases, I think I know that voice, but in other cases, I don't want to get it wrong. What's interesting about playing a character for this length of time is I feel in some ways I've become an advocate for that character. You know, the defense attorney, if you
right.
Sure.
Because new actors or new directors will come into Tremors and say, "Oh, let's do this," and I have to be the one to say, "I don't think Burt would say it that way," or I don't even think he'd say that, you know, because and so we argue about it and we discuss it and we have our different points of view, and ultimately, since I'm not a producer, and in fact, this is a silly story, I was a producer on one of the Tremors films, and weeks before we started, I said, I want to renegotiate. And it's like, oh God, what shit does he want now? You know, what is he gonna, burden us with now? They always want more. I said, no, this will surprise you. I said, I want less. I want my name taken. I want my producer credit taken away. They said, what do you mean? Everybody wants more. And I said, I've gotten to the point with this. We've been working on this for 6 months, 8 months, this and that. We're just about to hit the ground shooting. I think it was in South Africa. And I said, what I want most every day is just to show up, hit my marks, say my lines, and not have a lot of responsibility. I said, so I'd like to be taken off the producer credit.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And I guess I'm getting too old for the hassles or something like that. And I said, I don't want the whole responsibility of this film. I just want to show up, do my character, have a great time, and go to bed every night without somebody hassling me saying, what are we going to do about this? The answer is, I don't know, talk to somebody else. They're going to do something about it.
Well, and there is nothing worse than prepping yourself for that kind of work and feeling like you're distracted and have to deal with other stuff. Like, I don't know, when you're walking onto set, like how you want to be able to just focus on what you're doing and not be distracted. That makes so much sense. Right.
I think we're getting back to commitment issues again.
Yeah. Yes, right.
Yes.
No,
yes.
But you know what the refreshing thing is, Tremors is a big franchise. Obviously, you're on number 7. But to hear you talk still about the creative process and the passion that you have still for the character, even after 7 of them, I think that's so awesome. Because I think a lot of people and fans just in general of franchises might think, oh, they're just throwing up 3, they're throwing up 4, here comes 5. And there's a lot of work that gets put into these movies, whether it's the second one or the 7th one.
And it's a certain amount of stress too, because you feel, particularly as new people come in, and they've all been wonderful, but you feel as if you have to protect the franchise in some ways, because fans learn to expect a certain thing. It's a funny voice you're aiming for. It's sci-fi, it's horror, it's monsters, and yet it's quirky and weird. There's some comedy in it, and so how do you strike that balance? And finding that voice is not always easy, and some find it more than others. There's a young man who I've worked with recently on something else we're doing regarding Burt Gummer, and he seems to have nicely caught the voice, and I just find that so unusual, the Burt Gummer voice in particular. And so sometimes people just get it, and sometimes I'm not always sure I get it. That's why I need the drafts. But this is something you say how wonderful that I've kept up the enthusiasm, but that's what you do in daytime drama all the time. You play things for years.
Yeah.
And you bring a freshness and an enthusiasm to it that I think I would find difficult. Burt Gummer's a lot easier because I revisit him every couple of years. I don't see him every day. I don't see him every week.
True.
Did you have any feel in 1990 when you did this first one? When they did the first one, was it there was no ever thoughts of more, or were there?
You know, you know this as actors. In many cases, we look at what we do and we say, this is going to be a one-off. What are the chances?
Sure.
What are the chances, number one, that it's going to be picked up, or it's going to be a success, or they're going to want me back? You know, all the doubts that creep in.
Right.
Even as you're doing it, you're going, they hate me. They hate me. I know they do. They're smiling at me and they're nodding and going, that's wonderful. And you're not going to get the job. You know, this audition is not going to work out well, even though they're nodding and smiling at you. So that's what I bring into every piece of work I do.
The deep-rooted insecurity. Yes.
They hate me. They hate me. And I'm lucky to get this, and I'm lucky if anybody sees it. So no, that never happened.
Sure.
I knew this was fun. The overwhelming thing for me was, wow, I'm working with Kevin Bacon, with Fred Ward. Reba McEntire is a love. I enjoy her. This is a great cast. The producers and the directors are open and available to suggestions. Okay, let's try it this way, or let's change that word between takes. I mean, that's the sort of thing that for me is fun, when the writers get ideas as they're sitting on the set and go, oh, we got a better idea. Let's try this. Can you do that?
Right.
Yeah, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Just going with that crazy flow. So I knew they were wonderful. And beyond that, I had no expectations. I was thrilled that it was a very different character from the sweet, nice, liberal gentleman, progressive gentleman I had played for 7 years on Family Ties, forgiving his children everything, always ready to forgive, not a hard-ass bone in his body. And to go from that to such a completely different character, to me was the blessing. It's always been about variety, and I never thought of myself as a leading man. I always thought of myself as a character actor. Having a long career just plugged me into this odd character here or there. Obviously, I didn't have the looks for a leading man anyway. So I always saw myself plugged into a variety of different characters. So that was the blessing for me, because the question after 7 years of Family Ties, you know how it is, guys.
Yeah.
Will they accept me in anything more than this? You know,
Oh,
are they going to buy it? Are they going to say, no, we know what he did. We saw him for 7 years. Boring.
Right.
You know, so forth and so on.
And especially especially at that time when there's really no other way for you to represent yourself, like be it social media or write and produce your own digital show. There's like, it is your body of work that it's so easy to be pigeonholed in this business, but back then, even more so probably.
You're absolutely right. It wasn't one of those days when you could just say, I'm going to reinvent myself with a podcast, my own Facebook page. There were no such things. I had some photos of Reba and Reba. Somebody was asking me pictures I'd taken on the set back in 1989, and there was Reba sitting there reading a book in a director's chair between takes. It's like, a book. Do you remember those? So she wasn't sitting there doing this.
Right.
With her
of
thumbs.
Course. Of course.
There were no cell phones. We could not reach somebody off the set unless we had what they called a satellite phone.
Right.
In those days. So it was really, you had to send a runner down into town to get some information. It was just so different. And in some ways, I like freeing, because you were not at the end of an electronic tether that anybody could just yank on demand and say, hello, we're getting to you. You
Yeah.
couldn't get to somebody.
It
You were
definitely
really-
changes creativity for sure. Cause like now networks will listen to people on social media,
Yeah.
like, which
Yeah.
should never happen.
Right.
Like ever. Cause it takes all creativity out of it. You
Yeah,
know?
it's probably just a Russian troll anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
You never
Of
know.
course.
I think he should play the character this way.
Yeah. The onset experience, the camaraderie of, I mean, coming from theater or coming from, training programs, the
yeah.
camaraderie of a company is something that's really special. And on a film set, you can have that. But the more people are tethered to their devices, the less, when people are in their cast chair, they're talking like,
They're pulled out of it. They're pulled out of it.
yeah. So
Yeah,
it is.
That's a very good point, because we, in effect, what we created in those days was our own bubble at a certain
Yeah.
time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now that can be good and bad, if you, but
Right. You can't call your significant other, so you make one there.
yeah,
No,
exactly.
that's not good.
Done that, have you? So, no, but and the insularity of it all, but it created a bubble where you became this family where you were all on the same page, and there was no intrusion from the outside world unless you could get to a payphone.
Yeah.
Very different. Very different indeed.
Yeah, Michael, I got to ask about Family Ties just for a second, because obviously that was a game changer probably for you.
Very much so.
Getting that show. And,
from theater to my first television show.
and that's all I want to hear about is the audition process. Like, what was it? What was the audition process for you to get that job?
I was in New York at the time, and Paramount had an office in Columbus Circle, and so my agent at the time, I was doing an off-Broadway play at the time, and he called and said, "Look, there's an audition for this television show. I know you're not particularly interested in television, but sounds kind of interesting. He's his ex-hippie. He's now has a family. The kids are conservative." And I said, "What can I lose? Sure, why not? Why not?" So I went to the audition and did this for a wonderful lady. I don't think she's casting anymore. Her name was Gretchen Rennell. It's funny how you remember those names, but I auditioned for her for other things as well. She later worked for Disney, I think. Anyway, Gretchen was working for Paramount, and so she sent my audition to their counterparts at Paramount and said, "I think I have somebody who might be interesting." And a couple of days later, I heard from them. This is the days before FedEx.
Sure.
They had to send it by pouch on a jet. Somebody got on a jet airplane and took my video. Took my video.
Was that inter-office mail?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I know,
Yeah,
right?
Pony Express, right?
Right. Exactly.
And so a couple days later, I got a call saying, "We'd like to bring you out here to audition for NBC." And the way I heard it was, so then they're suddenly doing a deal, and the person who did my deal, this is really bizarre, is the woman to whom I'm married right now. It's just so bizarre. The woman who worked for Paramount in business affairs and head of casting at Paramount, who oversaw the head of casting, was the woman to whom I'm now married.
Wow.
So let me just put it this way. Had she known what she knew now, she would have done a lot better for me.
Yeah. she would have gave you a great contract.
Well, I mean, there's a joke there, right? Because she's negotiating, probably trying to get you under, like there's a joke there.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. She had me living in my car for the first 2 years.
Right. She's been keeping money from you for years or something.
Just like a good wife. Just like a good wife.
So, as the story goes, I did the auditions, and I finally went to network, and the person who made one of the final decisions was it's funny how these things happen, a child. The daughter of our executive producer, Gary David Goldberg, was looking at some of these tapes, and she must have been like 5 or 6. I don't know what she was. And she pointed at my audition and went, "I like that man." And oddly, she later she was an executive producer on Friends, among other things.
Wow. So she did all right for herself.
Shauna Goldberg Meehan. became an executive producer on Friends. And for doing me that favor, she still insists on taking 10% of whatever I earn in money.
Rightly so. Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's amazing.
It's a cutthroat business.
So I've like, sitcoms are always fascinating to me, the timing of it, the rehearsal process. The one thing that I was interested about is like the kind of the themes that you guys had on 80s family sitcoms.
Right.
The process of shooting those kind of morality moments where it reminds me a little bit of sometimes the tags that we do on daytime. Some of these, like where things would come together, and you have that moment with your kid where you have the perfectly clipped thing to say, and the music comes in, and it's like the sitcom dad makes it right moment.
Right.
Like,
right. Exactly.
Like those, earning those, that's amazing.
We used to laugh because we used to joke about, I think we had a gag reel once where it was nothing but hugs at the end of the show.
Right.
The show has to end in a hug.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
And it's a tricky thing. What the writers did was amazing because exclusive of commercials, they had exactly 22 minutes and 35 seconds to tell a story. Right. And to have some kind of resolution. It may not always be easy, but to some kind of resolution, you say, well, okay, we may not agree, but we understand each other, you know. And that, to me, it was a great show of its time, because it was a time when people could, those were the Reagan years, the 80s, okay? So it was the days when people could be on opposite sides of the fence politically. Reagan, a staunch conservative, at one time, a strong Democrat in the House, House Speaker Tip O'Neill.
Sure.
These two Irishmen could get together at that time and sit in the White House together over some Irish whiskey and iron things out. People don't do that anymore.
No.
Total opposite sides of the fence. They found common ground as two Irishmen and a glass of whiskey would say, let's toss a few back and see if we can compromise here. Yeah. And to me, politics and a lot of other things, putting on a show, as you know, is the art of compromise. If you're going to do 70 scenes in a day.
Sure
and
is.
So I wish Family Ties were on right now, because it showed us that the conservatives and the liberals within that house, there was a love greater for that family and that combination than there was in taking sides to the point it was never my way or the highway. And I think we could learn something from that today.
Absolutely.
Well, and just such a fun dynamic where you have the youth in the house not being the liberal, like that I didn't realize, because when I was watching it, I didn't understand the implications of that. I just was like, oh, he talks about this and he talks about this. Not till I got older did I realize, oh, the conceit was that the father's the liberal and the kid's the conservative. But yeah, what a fun kind of what a fun dynamic, and like there have been plenty of shows that have been built on much less.
And it's so wonderful too, because it was a lesson I didn't know until later, that your children are not going to be carbon copies of you, no matter how much you may want them to be.
Sure. Yeah.
Born with such totally different personalities and so many different wants and desires. Yeah. They're hardwired in some ways differently. They've got some of your DNA, but by God, if you're expecting a carbon copy, you're in big trouble.
Yes, absolutely. So the transition off of a show like Family Ties, obviously, did Tremors come around like before the show had ended? Almost
immediately. I auditioned for that within weeks of our show ending. And it was within a couple of days after the Family Ties 7th season wrap party that I was on the set of Tremors.
Wow.
I thought to myself, I can't believe this. How did this happen? I mean, it was the sort of thing you wish for. I mean, in some senses, it was my Breaking Bad moment, like Bryan Cranston had after being the father on a sitcom.
Yeah.
Now with Bryan, it was very different. That was a huge hit, and Tremors was not. Tremors in its original form on the big screen was out for about a week. A lot of people didn't see it. A lot of people Um, it just wasn't out very long. It didn't find itself until it got to the
The home
aftermarket.
video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where it started to build a steady following over time. People said, "Wait, I never heard of this thing. Where did this come
Sure.
from?" And word of mouth started going, and then it wasn't until about 3 or 4 years later when somebody came to me and said, "We're actually going to do a Tremors 2." I said, "Really?" It came out of the blue because it was not a great success. In some ways, Universal, I always felt, well, they marketed it as a straight sci-fi horror movie, and I had friends
Sure.
who said, "I don't see that kind of thing." I said, "No, you don't understand. This is no more a horror movie than Leslie, what was his name? Leslie Nielsen's Naked Gun is a detective story
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
about bad guys and good guys. It's a whole
Sure.
wacky take on monster movies. But anyway,
Well, what
so
oh,
I
sorry,
never
go
had
ahead.
the luxury. I never had the luxury of that. Oh my God! Look at him. He's a feature film actor now in a completely different role. Where has he been
Sure.
all our lives? That never
I
happened.
see. Sure.
And
Well,
that's
one of
just
the things,
things over which you have no control in the business.
oh, for sure. One of the things that I appreciate about the franchise, and I'm sure you've seen it as, the 30 years since 1990, there have been iteration, like horror has always been kind of a niche market. And I think it's becoming more and more profitable in the last 15 years, right? Because you can really feed it to the audience that wants it, right? But what I've appreciated what you guys have done is the quality. Like, you never look like Sharknado. Like you know what I mean? Because those are the kind of the movies that are kind of coming out where, they're taking a little camp, mixing it with sci-fi, mixing
Right.
it with some horror, and being like, oh, we know that people want this. Here it is. You guys still are very intentional about it. Obviously, you still have a good backer in Universal that is giving you the budgets to do it. Because the monsters always look good. I'm not sure how many computers were in Shrieker Island, but the monsters look great. Like, I'm not sure how much green screen acting you're doing now.
Right. Of course, there's more and more. There's some
Yeah.
practical, and it's just CGI. It's not your father's CGI or your grandfather's CGI. It's so much
Yeah.
better,
Right.
and it's so much less expensive, and it can be done in other countries in some cases. I'm sorry about that. Exporting. I'm sorry. Suddenly, I'm the most.
I'm just so happy that you have a landline.
Well, I do. And that's very Burt Gummer too. I'll tell you that because
Sure. Yeah.
I believe in redundance.
But you'd be in a
systems.
are you in a bunker? Because you'd be in a bunker if you're a Burt, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, but I love redundance in systems. If the mobile goes out, I've got the landline. If the landline goes out, I've got the mobile. I don't know. Old fashioned that way. I
It
still
works.
don't want to go. There's something solid about copper wire. What can I say?
All right, I'm going to ask a personal question, sort of here, because we'll talk about.
I'm wearing trousers. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The interview's over. So, in your bio it says grandson and great grandson of a railroader.
Right.
That interested me because one of the things I want to do is, and I was going to ask you, which would be the best. The two-part question. Obviously, it's in your family history, but I want to take my kids on a working railroad.
All right.
And I was going to ask you for your opinion on which would be the best one to do that. So I'd like to hear just your history of that, because I just found that fascinating.
What do you mean a working railroad? Do you mean like
I know there's one in Silver Springs, Colorado, where you can get on an old railway and take the train.
You mean you're not talking about Amtrak taking a long distance journey? You can go on like an excursion railroad, a museum type railroad.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, some of the best known, particularly, where do you live out west? Where do you live?
We live in California. Yes.
Yeah, of course, you're on.
Yeah,
you're on that show. Yeah, of course. You work with Bill O'Dell. You'd have.
That's right. He's famous.
Out west in particular, I mean, there are a couple that I would recommend that are not too far away. One would be the Durango and Silverton in Colorado,
right,
and the Cumbres and Toltec in New Mexico, Colorado. So that's the
Okay.
Cumbres and Toltec, and they are both part of an ex-Denver and Rio Grande narrow gauge. They have working steam. I think both of them may be closed now because of COVID.
Yes.
But they're great journeys, and that's something I would consider.
Awesome.
A little closer to home, it's not working steam, but it is an excursion. Is the Grand Canyon Railway in Williams, Arizona. It goes from Williams up to the south rim of the Grand Canyon and back again. Now they primarily run diesel only as opposed to steam, and steam is something to behold, especially for a kid. I'm still a freak about steam. It's just all those moving parts. It's so exciting for a kid.
That's cool. So go ahead, Brad.
I live up in Sacramento, and we have an
Oh,
incredible train museum.
oh yeah. The run by the state of California. I've been up there many times to the California State Railroad Museum, and I used to be once upon a time was a spokesperson for them.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I have a lot of railroading in the background. My grandfather and and his father before him were railroaders, and it skipped a generation. My dad didn't do that. He had enough of it in his own family. But I actually, ever since I was a little kid, I was just crazy about trains, and so did it myself, working my way through college. Worked in locomotive engine service for a railroad out of Chicago, where I grew up, and did that to support my summers during college days. So would go to the railroad and work for them in the summertime. So
wow, that's cool.
And for a short time, about 13 years, my wife and I were owners in a short line railway in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Another one of those excursion railroads.
Wow.
Which is not open right now. Otherwise, I would have recommended it.
Right.
Somebody's bought it from us, and they're refurbishing it. And again, it's COVID time, so everything's shut down. But if you want steam, I would try the Cumbres and Toltec or the Durango and Silverton.
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Quick question. Well, first thing, I wanted to know some of the locations that you guys have used for the Tremors movies. This latest one, where did you shoot that? It's gorgeous.
We were in the Malaysian peninsula of Thailand, and so we were down on a peninsula on the way to Malaysia, in Thailand, probably a good hour and a half by plane from Bangkok, and so it was a kind of out of the way place, and but really some wonderful areas. Lots of sunblock and insect repellent.
Well, I was going to say you had I always give Steve a hard time for his tan. He tends to be pretty red some of the time, but Bert had a real sun-kissed look going.
Well, yes, that's all makeup. I'm not a sun person. I'm almost sun adverse. And I see, so I ate it up when I was a kid naturally, but just now I take vitamin D pills.
Right.
Yeah.
So I cover myself with plenty of sunblock, and all that stuff you see is pure makeup, because I don't like the sun. I wear sunglasses to protect myself from the color of my own body. It's so white.
I feel you. I get
reflection of my body.
Yeah.
Right. No, I can certainly relate. The seventh movie, so much fun. For you playing this character this meant, what are the most satisfying parts of playing this character in this seventh movie? Like, what part of the process is still that part that gets you excited?
It's the emotional life of the character. And I'm sure you feel the same way in what you do. It is, this is terrible. People are going to turn on me. I swear to God. They're going to tar, feather me, and run me out of town with spears and torches. I'm not particularly interested in the monsters. I'm interested in this character of Bert.
Yeah.
I love fighting the monsters, but it's Bert's take on the monsters and Bert's take on life that always excites me. I'm interested in the emotion in every film we have. The most important thing for me, and the thing I try to build into Bert's journey, is what emotional obstacles does he confront, as well as the obvious obstacles of monsters trying to
That
kill
big
him.
monster right there. Yes.
Yeah, there's a big monster, right? That's an obstacle. That's a hurdle. What
Right.
are his emotional hurdles? And in the fifth one, for example, it was about finding a son he didn't even know existed in the world, and accepting that for a total loner, for a, blindsided by the fact that for a man who wants to be alone, how do you bring somebody else into your life? Into the sixth one, it had to do with facing mortality. He was infected by some sort of thing that needed a serum, infected by a graboid. Would he live long enough to see the end of it? He actually had to get out of a hospital bed with an IV in his arm to go shoot something.
Yeah, that's my type of guy.
Would he succumb to this or not? Facing his own mortality, what would that be like? And in this one, he's facing another emotional challenge, if you will, along with. So that emotional journey is still what turns me on, far more than the monsters. Do I enjoy that? Oh yeah, that's pure fun, shooting guns and chasing things down and dealing with the immediacy of death. But the emotional thing is always what gets me. And I'm sure you find that in your character. What are the obstacles to getting what you need? Who's standing in your way? And what's the worst that can happen if you don't get your emotional needs met? What are the consequences of that?
Well, then that also must take a fair amount of concentration, I would imagine, because doing the amount of technical elements that you guys do, special effects, I imagine there is a lot of waiting around and a lot of. I've never done anything that has that much that level of tech. How arduous is it to do some of that, the fight scenes? And it's a lot of everything we do is hurry up and wait. But I imagine with there, it's even maybe more so.
In a way, you go. It's. I think it's like war. Long periods of boredom, followed by short and intense blasts of sheer energy. As you know how it is when things are rolling. You know how it is when you get in front of the cameras, guys. So I think the main, my main adage is better acting through the threat of personal embarrassment. And that is you don't want to be the one to screw up when the cameras are rolling.
Yeah.
So your job when you're just sitting around and I can't do it. Some people can do it. They can separate themselves. They can go onto their cell phones. They can check their mail. They can check a website and all this stuff. And I have to sort of keep in the moment because a lot is going to be demanded of me when the cameras roll again. So in this case, there were literally almost dance moves. What do you do when you're fighting in a sort of ninja sort of way with certain things? There was a case with machetes, and where will it be, and what goes on this side first? And literally, we had to choreograph some of it like a dance.
Yeah.
So I'm off, kind of silently working my moves, so I don't embarrass myself. When says, he screwed up, got caught, let's do it again, let's reset everything. You know how that goes.
Oh, the tone of voice that is just so like that, you can hear the tone from a mile away when and when it's your fault, it's the worst.
All right, I'm going to tell you a story. I hope they include this in the extras, because I told them to. I had a heavy tank on my back. It was, like an oxygen tank or something like that. It was a heavy tank on my back, like a scuba tank. And at this point, I also had machetes. I had to wave them. And at one point, in this scene, I went with the machete, or went one direction, got off balance. The tank took me completely off balance. I fell backwards while they're shooting into a huge puddle of mud that was also part of the scene. This muddy, this pool of mud. Ugh. I'm on my back like a turtle, unable to get up, arms and legs going, unable to turn over to extricate myself from this position. cussing like a sailor. And
Sure.
I was so pissed off. I was just like, because it's like, well, I've ruined that take. You know,
Right.
there was nothing I could do about it. And everybody had to, I wasn't embarrassed as I was angry at myself. And I had to be talked down by everybody saying, you know, these things happen.
Sure.
You swung this thing, you were overbalanced, off you went, the tank took you down. And I was ticked off at, yeah, but now I've got to clean these clothes because I've got to change the clothes. You got to reset everything. I've taken time. I have a habit of being too hard on myself, you know, and that was one of those moments. But at the end of it all, I was so, I mean, I remember walking off the set and saying, that's it. This is my last Tremors. I'm not doing it anymore. I don't have it anymore. I can't do this. This is the last one. And the next day I said, I hope you guys get that on the extra reel, because there's nothing better than seeing an action hero in a really terrible moment completely effing up.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's going to be funny to some fans.
Sure. Sure.
I hope you say that. I don't know if they did or not, or if that'll be, but a moment of personal embarrassment, but a moment of total humanity and humility.
Yeah.
And so if they bleep out all the terrible words, they might include it.
It'll just be one long beep. That's all you need.
Exactly.
So Tremors Shrieker Island comes out October 30th, right?
20th.
October 20th.
20th.
October 20th. I wrote it down right. I apologize.
Yeah.
And that, so it's on DVD, Blu-ray, obviously streaming.
On demand. It'll be, I think Netflix is going to have it on demand.
Well, here's a great thing, because our audience is primarily women. The demographic is 18 to 65. And now we have a whole new audience to introduce Tremors to. Just like I did with my kids. We started watching the first one, and they're like, holy crap. You know, so now you get to go binge watch 1 through 6. So October 20th, you can watch 7.
Well, that's right. And you can get a whole box set as well.
A whole box set. And there's actually an interesting women's story tracking through this as well. A couple of interesting women tracking through as well. Very different sorts of women, and not just superhero types.
Sure.
Some very compassionate, interesting people in this. So, and for fans of John Hader in Napoleon Dynamite.
Yes,
right. He's great.
Some of the ladies liked him. He's my new fresh sidekick in this, and
awesome.
John was a hell of a lot of fun to work with.
Well, you had me at Reba, so awesome.
Oh, yeah. You know, I would have loved if any of those people had come back. I am a survivor only because the others kept dropping away, and I love this character. I love this character so much that every time they offered me Bert, it was like, yes, of course I'm coming back for Bert. He's such a great, wacky, OCD paranoid.
Love it.
A little like my life.
Right. But entirely lovable. So
yeah,
there you go.
But entirely
there you go.
Yeah. Hey man, well thank you so much for
We
joining us.
appreciate
This
your
was a
time,
real
Michael,
treat.
so much. Thank you very much.
An absolute pleasure. Good luck to you guys.
Thank you, sir.
I'll tune in to see your work as directed by Bill Udell.
There you go.
Awesome.
I think he's been mentioned on this more than Burt Gummer.
I know. It's gonna be the title of our podcast.
Oh, trust me, his ego is going to be gigantic.
I'm going to email him as soon as I get off of this and tell him I was guest of you guys.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
luck
for taking
with
the
everything.
time.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
Let me take a screenshot of us all right now for Bill, okay?
That's
Got it.
Amazing. That's tremendous. Great idea.
Got it. I'll send it to Bill. Okay.
All right, Michael.
Be
Thanks
well.
a lot.
Congrats
Take
on the
care.
movie, man.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.